Okay, I think we can get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Anna Zahler, and I'm the Director of Operations for IFMA Greater Toronto and South Central Ontario. A little bit of housekeeping first. As mentioned, we're expecting over 70 people on the call today from across Canada, so welcome everyone. But please do keep your mics muted for the duration of the call. We will provide a time for question and answer at the end, but feel free to drop any questions in the chat at any time. I would like to start by thanking our sponsors for today's IFMA Canadian Chapters webinar. Flynn is a leading building envelope trade contractor in North America, and Flynn specializes in solutions for commercial roofing, glazing, and architectural metals. With a commitment to excellence and sustainability, Flynn's integrated services offer clients a seamless approach to ensure the longevity and energy efficiency of their buildings. For more information, feel free to visit their website at flynncompanies.com. Facility Plus is North America's complete facility service expert. They're always open and fully staffed 24/7 for services across North America. Facility Plus is a one-stop shop for professionals in facility services, everything from janitorial and maintenance service to HVAC and electrical repairs. Facility Plus ensures that commercial spaces not only shine on the surface, but also operate smoothly and efficiently behind the scenes. With a focus on quality, reliability, and customer satisfaction, they are the go-to experts for businesses looking to maintain superior workplace environments. Feel free to visit their website at facilityplus.com for additional information. I would now like to take the moment to introduce our speakers for today. Jeff Morrows has over 2 decades of experience and stands at the forefront of architectural design. He's the managing principal at Stantec's Building Group in Winnipeg. His work, particularly in the realm of educational facilities within remote Northern First Nation communities, showcases a profound commitment to creating spaces with deep-rooted significance for both users and the community. Known for his collaborative spirit and visionary leadership, Jeff's projects resonate with an ethos of inclusivity and innovation, truly reflecting architecture that is designed with and for the people. We are also extremely fortunate to welcome Chief Heidi Cook of the Mississippiwistic Cree Nation, a leader deeply rooted in her community. Chief Cook brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in sustainable development and Indigenous governance. With an educational background in environmental sustainability, project management, and Indigenous development, Chief Cook's leadership is characterized by dedication to just development, protection of natural and cultural resources, and the revitalization of treaty relationships and governance systems. Under her guidance, the Mississippiwistic Cree Nation strives towards a future that honors traditional teachings while embracing modern opportunities. Please join me in welcoming both Jeff and Chief Cook. Jeff, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Anna, for the introductions, and thank you very much for Chief Cook for agreeing to co-present this with me. Maybe you just want to start with, I know this presentation is going across Canada. We normally have a land acknowledgement specific to which treaty we're in. So I was going to broaden it a little bit more. I sit right now in Treaty 1. Chief Cook is in Treaty 5, but we wanted to respect the fact that the spirit and intent of treaties and treaty making remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. And that came from a land acknowledgement from the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba that I thought I would quote that. And that's important because that's a lot of what we want to talk about today on the reconciliation aspect. And I just want to thank all of you for having an interest in this. And we're here to kind of just show you a bunch of slides, talk about the journey that we are all undertaken right now related to Jordan's Principle. And we're going to talk about truth and reconciliation. And this particular one is called action number 3 related to Jordan's Principle. What is Jordan's Principle, the history, its current funding scenario, what they funded before and where they're funding now, where Stantec comes into, and where part of my journey is the needs assessments and feasibility studies that right now we are working on. Chief Cook and Ms. Bowistic Cree Nation are a great client of ours right now, and we've actually designed something for them, and we'd like to share that. And then we're going to give you some context of what Jordan Principle facilities exist currently on reserve and why they're inadequate. We're going to show you kind of a lot of what Northern Manitoba looks like in terms of new project sites. They are very different than an urban site, and you'll see that. And then we're going to get into some of the meat of this presentation, which is the design process and how we've approached the studies with our partners, including Ms. Bowistic and Chief Cook. And then we'll have a little bit of time for some questions, as Anna had mentioned. I believe you can put them in the chat, and we can hopefully have enough time for that. And I just wanted to sort of illustrate that, I mentioned we are in Winnipeg right now. I'm sitting in Winnipeg. This is sort of my urban habitat right now on Treaty 1, and it differs very much from Chief Cook. And she is sitting in her community of Grand Rapids, Manitoba, otherwise known as Ms. Bowistic Cree Nation. This is important, and I'll let Chief Cook talk about her community because it is contextual to what we are doing right now with them. This is Lake Winnipeg at the very northern northwest component. This is the Saskatchewan River dumping into it at that bridge. This bridge heading to the left is pretty much the main highway up to the northern part of Manitoba. What you don't see, and Chief, I'll ask you to sort of weigh in on that, is there's a giant dam there from Manitoba Hydro from a long time ago, which continues to have impact on the community. So Chief Cook, welcome, thank you. Maybe I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself and your community.
Sure, thank you, Jeff. I just noticed on both of these pictures, it doesn't actually include the office where I'm sitting right now, which is a little bit
it's over here.
To
to the right. Yeah, we have other pictures later.
So this is my home, Mississippi, at the mouth of the Saskatchewan on Lake Winnipeg. Mississippi translates to Grand Rapids. Although there is no more rapids, they're all flooded behind the dam that's being shown right there. The front of the dam is in the corner. Those 4 turbines generate power for the province, and that was dammed up before I was born in 1964. The flood happened. So my house is just a little bit down, sort of where the corner is. Yeah. So I can hear the hum of electricity when I go to sleep rather than the roar of a rapids, which used to be the sound that lulled people to sleep for hundreds and thousands of years, I guess. Since the last ice age, we've been settled in this area. It's a fishing community.
Thank you. Yes, and this is quite, we're flying right over it in this picture, but you can see it from ground level when you look that direction. It's quite imposing, as you can see on the bottom left.
Yeah. I think the water is being held at least 100 meters above our heads there.
Okay, so that sort of builds into the calls to action. This is important because the calls to action through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, they had 94 calls to action, and they are broken into 6 different components. You can see there's child welfare, which is where the Jordan's Principle call to action number 3 resides, education, language and culture, health, justice and reconciliation. And the 2015 Truth and Reconciliation commission actually, the intent of here was to try to repair the harm caused by residential schools and move forward with reconciliation. And Chief Cook, you had mentioned it was more of a sort of a game plan or a roadmap to try to get some changes to move forward with some harms in the past. I know can you expand on sort of the issues with this and the lack of action maybe on the calls?
Well, I'm eternally hopeful. I mean, that's by nature. It is really frustrating sometimes with the pace of change, but the fact that we're having this discussion and this webinar today is, for me, a hopeful thing. You know, the history with residential schools is becoming more widely known. For so many years, it was just a quiet, not a secret, but like a common knowledge that was never talked about in our communities. But I think it's really important that the truth is being shared, and especially with our younger generations, because when we're dealing with the intergenerational effects of residential school, we have parents and grandparents who were raised in institutions, who were not fed healthy food, who were not nurtured in their development. So we experience dysfunction in our families. We just experience, you know, the health problems, the overrepresentation in child and family systems and justice systems and healthcare systems. And it can all be traced back to some of the abuses that were experienced through, you know, wanting to oppress our people through colonization, and not only through residential schools, but also the hydro dam. You know, I call these the tools of colonization, and they're meant to break down our families, break our connection to our lands, in order to, I guess, open up lands for colonization. And I feel like that is a shift. There's a shift in happening within our country towards reconciliation, so that we can, you know, recognize the harms of the past, that and how it translates to the situation today, and start to begin to repair relationships between, not only within our communities, between our families, but also within the greater community of, you know, Canada, so that we can be two good neighbors. We can thrive because there's enough room for all of us here.
Thank you, Chief Cook. You always say that so eloquently and off the cuff, right? So further to that, and obviously, the commissioner for the Truth and Reconciliation, Murray Sinclair, was, you know, very much leading this, and this is where I've highlighted the fact that each one of us, both personally and professionally, can have an opportunity to learn about it and to actually to have a better perspective on it. And that's part of what I'm willing to share here today, is my personal journey, my professional journey as well, and what we can do as a company to help our, you know, partners in this, including Ms. Poistic. And so that would be kind of my ask to this group, is become more familiar, read the 94 calls to action, and just the knowledge is key here. And there's lots of research, obviously, YouTubes and everything like that. And but we're going to focus mostly on this number 3. And that one says, we call upon all levels of government to fully implement Jordan's principle. So what is that? Because I'm not sure the level of knowledge in most Canadians, for example, would vary. And it continues to develop in my journey of learning too, and how we approach it on a design response. So Jordan's principle, this is probably the slide with the most text, so apologize for that. It's very important. It comes actually from a ruling, it's now law, from Jordan River Anderson, who was a young boy, a First Nations child in Norway House, not too far from where Chief Cook sits right now. And you know, he was not able to be treated in his own community. And what ended up happening was both the province and the federal government were arguing over who to pay for the Jordan's care. And in the end, after all that, with all the, it's your cost, like that sort of lack of responsibility and accountability, that he did die at age 5, and he had never been at home. There was a lot of lobbying afterwards, not necessarily from Jordan River Anderson's family, but the highlighted part here was that Jordan's family gifted his name to the creation of a child-first principle to ensure First Nations children could access the services they need without denial, delay, or disruption. Now, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal in 2016 ruled that despite this law, the government was not implementing the measures to actually meet those needs. And that's important because and here's the actual Norway House Cree Nation facility where they have the programming for Jordan's principle, and this is actually right on the building here. This is a sort of a blown up thing, so very similar to what I've just read out. He was born in 1999, and we are now in 2024, and we're still dealing with his legacy. And where I was talking about the Human Rights Tribunal is we're talking about this ruling, CHRT 41, and the fact that there's that many rulings on that the government has not actually followed up on their commitments is remarkable, but it's also an opportunity now that Chief Cook was talking about. We have an opportunity to get some funding for the capital assets related to the Jordan's principle. Chief, you and I talked about this a little bit, and it sort of builds on what you talked about. Is there any further comment you have on the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal related to what you see from your leadership side?
Yeah, I think this is an important slide. Like, I just want to point out the number of rulings by the Human Rights Tribunal, and this is not even a complete list relating to Jordan's principle and child and family services. It shows the structural discrimination that has been baked into the infrastructure of this country against the First Nations. So Jordan's principle is really important because it's addressing that discrimination. And, it's kind of with respect to the healthcare services, like, instead of fighting over who's going to pay, like, somebody pay and then we'll fight about it after, so that children don't suffer like Jordan suffered. He could have been at home, except for the jurisdictional bickering. And, I think that this is really important for people to understand, that the inequities that we see with our people is not of our own making. It's been systemic and targeted for a long time, and this is what reconciliation is about, is addressing this systemic discrimination.
Thank you very much. Further to that CHRT 41 amendment, and I've just highlighted some aspects of it, but really this is to provide a safe, accessible, confidential, and culturally and age-appropriate space that are needed to support the delivery of the Jordan's Principle services. And you'll sometimes hear it being abbreviated to JP, bantered about. That's a thing that we hear a lot. And finally, related to that, in terms of the capital funding and getting approval for same, they require feasibility studies and reports to kind of validate the needs of the program in each community. And so that gets us to kind of a little bit more context of what we've seen in our travels in Northern Manitoba with how they, before this funding pool for capital expenditures, they didn't have that. So they had funding for the program, and they have a variety of people to work on the program, but they didn't have anywhere to do it. And so this will sort of give you a sense of, consistently we're seeing in essentially like a house. And so this is again the one in Norway House, front, back, inside. Just going to give you a sense of the age of them. Sometimes they're converted from other uses. So they're not specifically, they haven't been designed specifically for Jordan's Principle programming. There is a requirement for a lot of storage outside. And this one here, and feel free to jump in, Chief Cook, like we see a lot of transportation, boats and vans and canoes and stuff in order to get youth on the water in their traditional lands to try to, because not every family has a boat, right? We'll get to, so this is, you know, we're seeing this a lot. This is a house in Nishawayasik, which is near Thompson, Manitoba. They got skidoos there, ATVs. Yeah. These are houses behind them. And they're very tight inside these spaces. There's food programs. There's an attempt to do an exercise treadmill beside the main kitchen table. But they're also working on programming, and you know, Chief, you were talking about this with me yesterday about, you know, getting back to essentially basics. And so I highlighted these things. I thought these were interesting, right? Like these are after when school's done, kids need something to do, and these are specifically for NCN, time-honored parenting, drum making, painting, medicine picking, blanket exercise, drum making, again, paint, like domestic violence workshop. Like they try to tailor it. And what kind of facility or what kind of programs, Chief, happen in your community related to kind of what happens in after school?
It's similar, although Jordan's Principle is, like you said, it's unique in every community. I'll point out, like, we also have, well, kind of like a house, but when Jordan's Principle was first adopted, and then when the funding started flowing to offer sort of the gap services that were missing in the communities, there was no capital as part of Jordan's Principle. So any available space was what you use to try and hire people to provide the services and to create the programs, et cetera, et cetera. So houses. In our case, we were able to combine with our Head Start program in a building there. And, you know,
I'll go to that right now. So this is another one, Jackhead, and there's the facility you're talking about.
Yeah, and the land, like the connection to the land is really important part of our healing and part of our health. It's not only for mental health, but also like physical health, you know, promoting healthy diets and learning skills about how to process traditional foods. Like I said, we're a fishing community, so it's actually also economic interest in knowing the lands and how to have those skills. We do medicine picking. Yeah, just like making it fun to be outside. Like
I always
you don't want to be stuck in a box.
The scale of this chair was massive. It was pretty funny, actually, a little bit unexpected too. And then, you know, here's an example of all, you know, your connection to the water is huge, and that these are programming to get kids out on the water, and this is the floor plan, and you know, it's pretty basic and it's undersized, and you make the best of it. you want to talk about the kitchen a little bit? In terms of, you know, teaching kitchen more than not?
Well, food is an important part of our culture when we gather, right? Like when you've come, we've always had lunch and that kind of thing. That's an important part of our gathering space, but it's also part of our health promotion because, you know, the diet has changed and moved away from traditional foods to more store-bought foods. And when we have generations of parents who have lost skills to be able to provide, like, prepare healthy meals because they're being fed in institutions, because we're limited by what's offered in the store here, because our fish is unhealthy to eat because of mercury poisoning from hydro, et cetera, et cetera. So many reasons. So, you know, just getting back to cooking lessons and how to prepare healthy meals and how to process traditional foods and enjoy them is a big part of you know, the land-based health programs. We have land-based education. We have land-based uh, addictions treatment. We, you know, the land is so important to who we are as a people that um, is part of that healing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Starting to go off, so I'm gonna stop.
No, that's good. And
Don't
I
get me
thought,
on the line.
yeah, I'll mute you if I have to. So the thing that's interesting about when we visit from Stantec, when we go to various things, there are different unique skills and traditions that we are seeing, and one of which is in the bottom right corner for sort of getting regalia figured out, and I'll just come back to that one in a second. But like, this is just a beautiful thing that we saw made by somebody in the program, and it's you had mentioned the importance of pride again, and the customizing, like being able to do things that are unique to your community.
Yeah, they're expressions of our culture, right? And for so long we were told that our culture was no good, but, you know, recognizing that there's so much beauty that we can share with our children from our culture, from our teachings, and to take pride in learning the skills to be able to carry on those pieces, you know, like the craft and art that have been part of our culture for generations. So being able to relearn the skills of how to work with uh, beads, with hides, sewing regalia, you know, they do ribbon shirt, ribbon skirt, powwow regalia, all blankets. All these are really popular workshops for people who want to learn how to produce things like this, and they're all unique to each person, you know, like it's not a pattern that everybody makes the same thing. Each person gets to make their own that represents, you know, themselves. And it's just a really, I think it's really beautiful for the children to be proud of, you know, their cultural expressions, like by doing things like this.
Right on. And then, so that's the beauty of it, and then here's the challenges of it. And you know, the IFMA group, I'm sure this would not be a sign you'd want to see in your facilities that you're looking around and after. And this is something that you know, you struggle with a lot. It's not, things don't work the way they're supposed to work a lot, and these are some basic elements. If the heat is off, you can't do your programming. And so it's another reason why facilities aren't quite, they're not up to snuff with what needs to happen. So I'm going to jump into kind of what I talked about before, about like what we're talking about in terms of these project sites, because every site is unique, and yet in the north, the Manitoba, they're beautiful. They're quite, this one here is in Norway House. Just so happens to be a forest fire in the background there when we were there that one time. Did get extinguished by the Thompson water bombers, which was great. But this was really hard to walk on, a lot of peat, a lot of rock. And then this is Nishkawasik, Cree Nation Nelson House. Same thing, beautiful, lots of forest. I was telling Chief that we kind of got complacent, and somebody says, hey, can we just have a bear watch because there's bears in the facility? Whereas this one here is a little more in the interlake of Manitoba, so a lot flatter. This is in Keenan Joshtigon, and their facility was going to be right next to the school, and they wanted that specifically. The Jordan's principal is on the right currently, and their new one is envisioned for the left. This one is up in Matthias Colomb, and then finally municipalistic. So we're going to get into the design part, and so this is the site that Chief, you and council had selected, and I want to build into that in a second here, but here's where we're at. The phase 1 pre-capital work is what they're funding right now. There's a part A and a part B. The part A is the needs assessment. It's a formal document that is submitted that includes the programming and a more basic plan. There's obviously a need in each community for that, but there's a formality to this. Part B is once they set on a site, the technical side. We deal with the geotechnical, the site, a lot of the infrastructure. And then phase 2, which we're not quite into yet, but that's when we really kind of do what we call the traditional design development, construction documents, tendering, and then the phase 3 is construction and 4. So we're really early in this related to CHRT 41. And I will say that, you know, I've practiced for many decades, unfortunately, it sounded like. This is a unique building typology, and I've worked in a lot of different types of buildings, and this one doesn't really fit into any one particular category. It's a combination of education, healthcare, and recreation, and because of that, we're sort of at the trailblazing side of things, and we don't know what the answer is, and it is unique for each community. But I thought I'd mention that. We do not see the same programming each time. There is a huge administration and you know, case managers and how, you know, they need special offices. We need meeting spaces. There's usually a gym or multi-purpose room, fitness, commercial kitchen, the teaching aspect to it, and also leveraging that into kind of more community-based stuff. There's sometimes classrooms, computer labs. Some of them have childcare. But the biggest one is assessments for, you know, visiting professionals, a lot of therapists, and because they don't, you know, communities don't have access to those daily. And then some support spaces like grooming rooms. We sometimes have residences for overnight stay for those visiting professionals or even staff for the Jordan's principal. And also just the importance of outdoor services and land-based learning, as Chief had mentioned. And we always kind of incorporate that. This is just a wide variety of different locations within Manitoba that we've been working with. Mishipawistic is right here on the left, top left of Lake Winnipeg. Briefly talk about there, you know, when we get into design and cost of construction, it is much more expensive in the north. Some of these communities don't have all season roads. Mishipawistic does. They're on the main Highway 6. And there's obviously a lot of, you know, each community, we like to learn from about each community and maybe how do we customize a design to reflect the uniqueness and cultural uniqueness of that community. And we'll get into that with Mishipawistic in a second. But the biggest thing is listening and actually investigating. Without a doubt, the communities are so proud of what they have and what they want to do that they love showing it off. And so we end up in weird spots sometimes and bush and sometimes snowshoes and stuff like that to see, and also to present back to the communities and to get feedback from a greater community value. So as an example, because Jordan River Anderson from Norway House, we are working with Norway House right now, but just to give you a sense, I just highlighted, like, we're talking about 500 kids in Norway House that need Jordan's principal programming in the winter, and it jumps to 700 in the summer. It's not that's a big community. The next one. So just to give you a sense of, let's just skip that one, sorry. I've been on a York boat. I've raced a York boat. It is not pleasant. It hurts like a lot. muscles you'd rediscovered. It was fantastic, but that's a lot of the history in Norway House, and I did not know that until we started working with them. They are also impacted by Manitoba Hydro. There's a lot of this dashed easement lands, but they wanted a site very close to the highway to be, again, express the pride of that. And Chief, you were mentioning that's one of the reasons why you picked the site we're talking about. So here's an idea of kind of what Norway House looks like. Again, and when we were working on this one, the colors are important. Like, there's some therapeutic and recreation, multi-purpose, there's program spaces, staff, and then there's therapy. And the colors, when we start designing, you know, this is in what we would call traditional, how we would plan it, very efficient, very sort of Western based. And then you can see in version 5, we start to break that up again. And then we ended up with this. And this was a journey to get to this, but it becomes something that we're seeing a lot of, the importance of the circle and the curve. And then when, you know, some of the inspiration, a lot of natural, you know, connections to nature, curve, natural materials. Same thing for Keno and Joshtagon, like understanding what their community is about. So Keno J is the Northern Pike in Ojibwe, and that I didn't know that until we researched it and found from that. There's that they want the site right in the essentially the main street. And again, like, this is how we start thinking as designers, and then we start to break that up a bit. And then we, you know, this is hard to build, and it's harder to design as well, but it's very important. So we ended up with this as an option, sort of more circular roundhouse based. Then we tried a different option, more based on the arrowhead, and this comes out of discussions. This is the one they selected as their preferred option. Now within this is the KFN one. We've highlighted some of the things that they want to do there, and it's similar to most. But you know, for them, that community pantry idea, even like people that they like emergency food needs. Sometimes they don't have access to that in their own families. And that's important. And sometimes there's winter storms, they can't get to it. Like, these are pretty remote communities. Now, you can't just go down and get things at the store. A lot of sea cans are used for storage because they need to accommodate for that. In this case, they have 1-bedroom suite for a visiting professional. They have land-based learning on the right-hand side. They actually have a garage incorporated into it so that they can have, in this case, the sort of teenager side of things, programming for that. And there's a lot of storage and vehicle storage for that. But also after school, what do they do after school? Parents aren't home. They're not old enough to stay at home alone. So this is kind of where they want almost an activity. They can do their homework. They can do some fitness. And we've seen that also as just a covered area outside. You know, if it's raining, they can still be outside for that. And this is, you know, just a massing of the preferred option, and the schools to the right. Now, so Chief, this is you. We learned a lot about your community and you and your leadership, and you know, we're talking about the site plan. So down this highway a little bit further is where you are seated right now, and this is Highway 6 all the way up, and there's sort of like a center of gravity in the middle here. Do you want to maybe talk about what you see on the screen here, especially also in highlight there, the Tansi Tawa? Am I saying that right? Tawai?
Wow, yeah.
Tawa? Can you explain
Tansi.
on that? Welcome there is room.
Yeah. Tanse is the greeting. People say it as a hello. Actually, literally, it means how, like, how are you? Tawau is a welcoming that says, there's lots of room here, you know, come in because there's room for you. So that is what we are going to have welcoming us into the building that we're working on. First, phase 1 is our cultural space. Phase 2 is our Jordan's Principle in that red square there. And this is kind of a hub of our community. You can see the powwow arbor, which is the the four directions colors there down by the water. Our current community hall, our health center with our health authority, nursing station, our current Jones principal, Head Start, daycare, and then the 55 plus housing complex. This is kind of where that a lot of the housing started. So the road that goes south along the river, you know, it started there and just has been extended over the years. And when the loop that goes north, it started there along the river and over the years has looped around and, you know, been filled in the middle. So this is the heart kind of, and then what looks like a gravel square is actually, this picture is probably taken like
right here.
yeah, a couple of weeks before we laid sod. We made our recreation field. There's a skate park, outdoor basketball courts, outdoor stage, and a big soccer field for our kids.
Right. Good. And there's actually where you're at. I think you're right close to there, right?
Oh yes, yeah, there I am.
Just yeah. And yeah, and so part of the process is engaging and sort of presenting back to communicating feedback. And I don't have any pictures of it, but it's nice to see, like right outside your door, our drawings are on the board and people are putting sticky notes on it with, yes, I like this, no, I don't like this, that kind of stuff. And that's important. And
Yeah.
this was, you know, just a quick synopsis of how long it took. We started in July. We met in our office here, and then back in October, we helped you present. You know, this is you presenting back to the community with some of our renderings. And I do want to talk about sort of these three design concepts, and we presented them to you and your leadership, and it was interesting to get sort of the like, first of all, unanimity, which was great. And we didn't really have to do too much hybrid, but in this case, you have a unique scenario where you have funding for a cultural center, and that's this sort of smaller part here in the gray. And then we wrapped around, we did sort of three concentric circles expanding out, phase one, cultural center, phase two, Jordan's principle. And that's the same for all three of these design concepts. We did name it water, and sometimes that might bias people to, you know, associate a name with some. So we had to be careful with that, but it seemed to be better than just concept one. So why don't I just whip through the three of them here, and then we can talk about them individually. So this is the wind idea, almost like a windrose. Same idea, build it. That phasing was a driver in how we designed this, as well as the phase one and phase two. We had to accommodate for phase two with phase one design. And this one here was called the wave, more for the roof. So Chief, why don't we talk about this one in particular and the planning, the floor plan on the bottom left. This was not a favored scheme. Can you expand on why?
Well, it feels too institutional, you know, to be, it's everything is square. And because we have our cultural space as well, where we want to create a place just to celebrate our culture, to encourage the learning of our language, etc. It needed to feel more welcoming. You know, like when you look at our buildings, our houses, we're always stuck with the cheapest, you know, like just the plainest kind of stuff. And for this to be a place of healing for our community, it needs to be more welcoming than a box. And we need to incorporate, you know, elements that will actually make us feel welcome, you know, more than just a sign that says Tawal, but actually to see parts of our culture reflected back, and connection to the outdoors, you know, like when I first started working, we had a different band office and there was no windows. because the windows get broken. You know, like there's so many windows in this building. We have, you know, obviously higher incidence of social problems and, you know, can translate to vandalism and etc. But you know, there's other ways to deal with that than having no windows,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and to create this positive impression in our community and to make people feel good is also going to address some of those issues. So it's part of a holistic approach to community development, part of a holistic approach to our health, and you know, it's part of our long-term healing and strengthening as a nation, let's say.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I won't get into, you could spend a whole hour talking about this
Yeah,
symbol,
that's right.
but we won't do that this time. But what was neat about it is that's actually your constitution. It's not a written document like you'd normally expect, but it's what you've created, and it's amazing. I have examples of that from, you know, you. It's incredible, and you have, every time we go up there, you have just sweaters and everything, and it's fantastic. So let's just get to the one you did select. So the preferred option was option 1, and it was great on a expandability side of things, but also just the ability to connect all the programs together in sort of more shared circulation atrium spaces. And the likes and the dislikes of even that option 1. So the likes were the commercial kitchen and being adjacent to one another, the gym and NPR being adjacent to one another, some more planning sort of stuff. The fact that you know, it's not far from the main entrance to get into the NPR room for youth to go in and out, and so thankfully, you know, you liked option 1 and 2, the curvilinear. That was very clear. Jordan's principal staff did too, and that was important that everybody had consensus on that. And so this is just kind of an idea of a graphic of what kinds of spaces are happening. The accommodations part on the top right would be a future sort of component to it. So the residences, some actual 2-bedroom suites was envisioned. And then you can kind of tell, like, there's a lot of stuff going on here. We won't get into the details, but the color coding are important, related to, you know, what kind of use it was. And this is the 3D rendering of the combined cultural center and Jordan's principal, the cultural center being the smaller part in the middle. And there's a side from the highway. Some views, looks like at sunset. So this is the sort of more refined, it's not quite looking like this, but there's even a doula suite in this. And one of the feedback too is we started with a bunch of square rooms, and that was a negative. And so we've sort of refined it to be more of a circular response for the healing room. And this is kind of the final design. The cool thing is this is out for bidding right now. It's out for tender, which is exciting. It's kept us busy, and I know we had a community presentation and a walkthrough with the contractors last week, and some of the interior sort of cultural aspect. And this is one of my favorite. This is the traditional healing room there's that constitution on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to give a shout out to, it's not me doing all this stuff. These are some of the architects and intern architects. And I will say, Chief, we were so delighted. We went to the store next door to where you are right now, and you had it posted in the vestibule. And we were taking pictures of it, and we're like, that is so cool. And there's a Noop, right? I don't know if I spelled it right, but this is a dog that greeted us in the community, and everybody knew who the dog's name was. Great. But so thank you, Chief Cook, for your insights on this. Thank you very much for your partnership on everything that we are privileged to do with you. And I just want to give it over back to Anna for any questions.
Thank you both so much. This has been completely invaluable. I'd like to open it up for question and answer right now, so feel free to either use the Q&A button or the chat button. at the tops of your screens. Or if you'd prefer to speak, just raise your hand and I'll call on you, and feel free to unmute yourself and ask the questions. While we wait for folks to gather their thoughts, I'd like to ask a question, from an IFMA and facility management perspective, really. What additional learnings would you recommend for facility management professionals to look into if they want to get more involved or more educated in how they can support these different initiatives?
Well, Chief, do you have any idea? I mean, I know there's lots of information online for sure. Frankly, like way more than people think. It's just a matter of finding it. There's lots of publications that I found too that you can get, and it might be, getting one for the office, for example, because I've now thought about that too. It's just, creating a physical library of sort of, what can you do, and maybe you borrow it out to staff. Or I've also, like, just so you know, there is a documentary on I think it was CBC or National Film Board, I can't remember, about Jordan River Anderson's story, and we did present that to our staff, and it was such a good connecting back to those that are working on the project, and that would be something that I would recommend you looking up too. Chief, anything that comes to your mind?
Well, I wanted to say, Jeff, I really appreciate how willing and engaged yourself and the other members from Stantec have been in learning about our community and learning our history and what our needs are in order to translate that into a building that's going to serve us. And see, we talk about Jordan's principle, maybe, like it's health, it's mental health, it's, some recreation, some, family services. But when we think about, this opportunity to create a building in our community, we also have to think of all the other potential uses, so it's a really, really multi-purpose space. We were building the NPR in the cultural space. We wanted a place for kids to be able to play, but we also had to have double doors because we need a place for funerals, so getting to know and thinking about what the needs are in the community, and having a space that can be as flexible as possible for the many uses, because we don't have the resources, because we don't have the space to build something for every potential activity that we want to do. And for people across Canada, I think it's just really important to understand, land acknowledgement instead of becoming a thing, like understand the people who are native to the area where you are, and learn about the history of your own community, and to start building those relationships and that understanding.
Thank you. It really is an honor to learn more about where we live, and that we're not just in our little neighborhood. We're part of a greater community, for sure. Anna, you got more questions there?
We've got a question from the group from Kathleen. From an FM perspective, what provisions were made for the maintenance access to equipment?
For the new design, I trust. So, I'll tell you, a comment we heard from the community, and it might not have been this particular project, but just how they actually receive materials. And in this case, I think, Chief, you can correct me wrong, we heard it's one trucking company and they only have a certain size truck, and it's not little. And so have we considered how it's going to deliver it, and frankly, how you're going to unload it and where you're going to store it and all that sort of stuff. And it's different in each community. And if you don't know like that's why we do these meetings. We want to hear from each individual has a different perspective on what's important to them, and it's sometimes hard to sort of sift through all that because sometimes they're opposing. But I don't know if you have any other answer for that, Chief.
Well,
like operating,
I
the
was,
challenges you have for operating.
yeah, I was thinking about like the big discussion we had about door locks.
Mm.
Do you want keyed locks or card access? Well, you know, we have to think about power outages and do card, you know, like we are, one of the other uses we're trying to build into our building is as a emergency center in case of power outages, right? So a cooling or warming center. And so we want to have a backup generator. So, okay, so card locks might work, but what if we have to reprogram? Can we have something that will reprogram here? Do we need to pay somebody to come out? You know, like how long of a wait is that? If somebody loses their keys, you know, like we have to call a locksmith from the city and make an appointment for them to drive 4.5 hours out here to rekey a lock. And so, like, trying to come up with the solutions that will work best for local maintenance and not having to rely on technicians from the city to come in is one. You know, our current Head Start building had a huge issue because the furnace was on the roof and it would freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the pipes underneath, like the furnace itself would break down and then you have to get up on the roof. We can't have basements because of our, you know, the type of land we're on. So, you know, sometimes in our houses, instead of putting furnaces and HRVs in crawl spaces, we've moved them up to the main floor because you know, for changing your furnace filter every 3 months is a lot more difficult and unlikely to happen if the furnace is tucked away in a crawl space. So, like, these are the kind of considerations that we have that I'm not sure that are common everywhere else.
Well, we try to, like our mechanical team, for example, we don't want to put anything on the roof. It's hard to maintain. We like to have them on the main floor. And we also try to get systems that are not overly complicated to try to figure out, because training of staff and maybe some staff retention challenges that some communities have, you know, it has to be more intuitive. And that's something we sort of learned. There are some very complicated control systems and mechanical systems out there. So we try to customize it to the reality of where we're designing for.
We are at time. I don't know if you folks have a couple of extra minutes and if other folks do or not, but we did have one more question. What are the main priorities to get the best user experience? The operation of a building like this, do you consider, like, what do you consider or require aside from proper maintenance?
Well, okay, so the best user experience is depends on the user, right? And I think that is a key aspect to that too. Like a kid's going to use the building differently than a staff would, and then frankly an operator would. And so we understand that, and as a result, even we frequently try to engage the future maintenance group or operations team in the discussions early if they're in place, and a lot of the times they're not. So then you just kind of take your best guess at it so much. But the user experience, I mean, for us, that's key. You know, even, you know, the welcoming part, as Chief mentioned, that's what we want the building to do, to encourage people who maybe don't want to do this to go in there and be comfortable doing that. So that welcoming part is part of the user experience, frankly. And then when you're in there, the flexibility of the space, the comfort of it, the fact that, you know, you will not excel at anything from learning to performance when you're too hot or too cold. We see that all the time, so that comes into play as well. But also just to be, you know, happy there, and to help, you know, if there's programming, in this case where there's therapy, have the right types of therapy spaces so that people get out what they need to get out, and that could be furniture, size, privacy, whatever, activities within the space. And there's no right answer to anything. It's a little bit of trial and error, but you know, we like to think that we can improve on what's there now. How's that? For sure. There's lots of room for improvement.
We have one final question if you have time for it. And that is, will users be able to smudge anywhere in the building, or is there a dedicated space? And this might be for Chief Cook as well.
Yeah, we will smudge anywhere. I know some places will say, well, we have to shut off the sprinkler and the alarm and et cetera, et cetera. In my experience, the smoke alarm never goes off from a smudge. And so, I mean, we talked about that early on in the design, and we just said, you know what, don't worry about it. We're going to smudge everywhere we want to smudge. So, you know, it's never happened. I've never seen the alarm go off. So I think we're good. And Jen was very adamant about it, our project manager. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you both very, very much again for this fantastic presentation. I know I speak on behalf of everyone in the group. This was very informative and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you for sharing your stories.
Thanks for having us. Thank you all.
Yeah. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Jeff and Chief Cook.
Thanks, Trudy.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah, you bet.